Sure you're not just behind. Oh wait, the stream, the YouTube stream is just the wait page.
Wait, guys, we're live.
Yeah, I
Hello.
hope you've been having a great afternoon or morning if it is still morning for you. And welcome to our resume workshop. In case you haven't met us here, hello, my name is Erin. I'm the DSC lead for the club.
Hey everyone, my name is Michael. I'm one of the tech leads here.
Hi everyone, I'm Jasmine. I'm the operations lead.
Everyone, I'm Giovanni. I'm also a tech lead here, and I'll pass it on to our new tech and operations leads.
Hey everyone, I'm Nathan. I'm the new tech lead, and yeah, I'm excited to be here to work with you guys on these workshops, and can't wait to be helping you guys out in future workshop. Next to me is Joshua, who unfortunately couldn't be here today. He's the new operations lead, and yeah, can't wait to get started.
Yeah, we're super excited to have our two new members of the opposite team here to support you guys throughout the rest of the semester. With that, we'll pass it off to Michael.
All right, cool. Thanks everyone. So yeah, just getting started into the resume workshop. We'll first start off with just asking ourselves, what is a resume exactly? You may or may not have heard of what exactly it is, what it contains, but just by looking at the Wikipedia definition, we'll see that a resume is just a document created and used by a person to present their background, skills, and accomplishments. So that's all you're really doing. You can see why it is so widely used for job applications, because all you're really doing is just marketing yourself to potential employers and showcasing what you can be or what values you can hold for a certain company. And so with that, we can ask ourselves, when exactly should I make a resume? And the short answer is right now. Just do it, regardless of what skills you have, what projects you may or may not have done. It's always good to just have a resume at hand, because regardless of what all of you have done, you can always put on your resume contact information, your education, as well as classes you're currently taking that can be transferred on to be applied to a certain position within a company. And so along with that, if we are gonna create a resume, we would have to know what type of resumes are there, which one is right for me, which one should I create. And so we can look at 5 right here. You'll see that we have the chronological resume, the functional, combination, targeted, and mini resume. So we can hop into our first one, which is going to be our chronological resume. And so this type of resume is just a resume format that focuses more on your professional experiences relevant to a position, such as work experience. And you'll see right over here on our template for a chronological resume that will have a main portion of our resume dedicated for work experience. So those of you who do have a lot of work experience would use something like this. And for those of you who are a bit more observant and are noticing all the text, you don't need to worry about the text, just kind of showcasing how work experience is the main chunk of this. And you'll also see on this, there's a skills portion where in this resume template, and in a lot, you'll see them do something where they are kind of ranking themselves on their certain skills that they have. It isn't really recommended by us because it's really subjective. Of course, how you rank yourself isn't how you would actually compare within a certain environment. So just thought I'd put that out there for now. But yeah, just moving on from that though, we'll see when exactly should we use our chronological resume. And you should use a chronological resume when you have several years of professional experience, minimal gaps between your jobs, or you're changing positions or industries. Because because just looking at an overview of this resume, what you're really doing is just showcasing all your experiences that you do have working for certain companies or being at the job, and what you can provide for the company you are applying for through these work experiences. And so moving on from that, we have our functional resume. And now this type of resume is more suited for for formatting your resume and showcasing your skills or accomplishments that you have relevant to a position. And so now if we look at a resume template for this type of resume, you'll see that instead of having a big portion of our resume dedicated for our work experience, now it's just a bit smaller of a section, and now the main section circled in red is for our skills, our skills that we can provide to a company and to a position. And so now just asking when we would use this type of resume. This is good for pretty much, I'm pretty sure for everybody here, about being recent college or high school grad, if we're currently in high school or college, or if we just have recently graduated from high school or college. Because it's best to use this format when you have little to no professional experience, or if you do have large gaps in jobs or internships and you don't really want to put that down, put down these large gaps on your resume. And so just, yeah, a general overview of looking at this type of resume is that you just want to show, instead of showing your experience to an employer, you want to show what skills you do have that you can provide to them. And so now, moving on from that, we have our combination resume. And just as the name suggests, it takes aspects from your functional resume and from your chronological resume, and then it puts them together and combines them into this one type of resume format. And so now, looking at a resume template for this, you'll see that instead of having one large section for one specific thing, it's kind of partitioned off into two separate sections, one for your skills and one for your work experience. And so now for this type of resume, when exactly would we use this? We would use this type of resume if we've obtained a few years of work experience, if we do have large gaps in jobs that we don't really want to put on a resume, or we're applying for a junior or mid-level candidate position. Because the general overview for this type of resume is that you want to showcase your skills that you do have to kind of make up for any white space or missing gaps for when you are putting down your work experience. So it kind of shows the best of both worlds of showing your skills and your work experience. And so just by looking at the three main resumes that we've talked about so far, you'll see that we have the chronological, functional, and combination resume. These are going to be the three main resume formats that you will run into or that you may use. However, there are two more that we have mentioned. And moving on from that, we'll first talk about the targeted resume. And just as the name suggests, for this resume, you're basically just highlighting the skills that are relevant to a position. And the main thing of when you want to use this is when you don't want to have other accomplishments or other skills wash out the more important ones that companies are looking for. And so you basically want to use this for highly competitive positions where you're applying to one specific role rather than just a generalist position where we're just asking for a more generalist person that has knowledge of a variety of skills. And so yeah, so this type of resume would be a bit more specific in what you are putting on it and what you are portraying yourself as. And so moving on from this, we'd also have our mini resume. And so just as this name suggests as well, it's just as any old resume would be, except just simplified. It's a mini version of it. You want to have it be under 50 words, just so that anybody who is looking at your resume can quickly take a glance at it and get a good feel for who you are and if you'd be like a good candidate for a position. And so now from this, we can move on to looking at the broad overview of everything we've discussed. And so with this, we'll see that we have our chronological resume, which is just more oriented towards if you have a lot of work experience. Your functional resume for if you don't have that work experience and you can put on your certain skills that you do have for a company. Combining them together, you have your combination resume, which blends both the aspects of chronological and functional resumes so that you put your work experience as well as your skills that you can provide for a company. And then over at the top right, you'll see that you have your targeted resume, which are tailoring for specific jobs, which require specific skill sets. And then you have your mini resume, which is just brief and to the point. It's straight and to the point. You want somebody to take a quick glance at it and get at least a good feel for who you are, just making a good initial impression. And then for the bottom right, you'll see I didn't really talk about it at all, but you do have your non-traditional resumes, which is such resumes such as having a video format. this can be actually good for any of you getting into the art industry, or something like that, where your resume would just be a showcase of your skills, like say a portrait or like a photograph, or say a video that you've edited, or something along the sorts, just showcasing what you can do. But yeah, this is mainly non-traditional, so you may or may not need to use it at all for a certain position you're applying for. And so with that, we can go over some unwritten resume rules. And so some unwritten resume rules, just quickly going over it. I know some of these things we will go over later within the and discuss further in this workshop. But just of course, keep your resumes one page. And then of course also avoid any grammar errors and first person pronouns. So don't really use I, me, my. And also be sure to send your resumes as a Word or PDF file, because this is going to be the type of file that's what's read by ATS, which Giovanni is going to be discussing further about. And then you want to also be sure that your resume files have professional names in them. Don't just smash your keyboard and save it as a .pdf. You want to have a good file name, because employers are going to see this file name because they need to download your resume file. And looking at number 6, we want to keep our resume organized, and 7, easy to read. Because if it's just complex and an employer can't really understand everything just by taking a quick glance, they're not going to spend the extra time to understand it. They're going to spend at most 10 seconds looking at your resume initially. And number 8, you want to quantify as much as possible. This is of course something that Aaron is going to be covering later on in the workshop, but basically just it's all a numbers game. Just put numbers when you can on your resume. And number 9, you want your resume to at least be a little bit visually appealing, because that can attract the attention of employers. They may take a little bit more time looking at it if it's good to look at. And last but not least, you want to include context within your resume. You don't just want to put down specific skills that you have or specific accomplishments that you have, but you also want to specify why you have these, what are some examples of these, and how you showcase this. And with that, I will now pass it on to Giovanni.
Thank you, Michael. Everyone, I will now go over the formatting tips that will help you write your resume with the least amount of mistakes. Right. So before the formatting tips, let's go over what an ATS is. So an ATS stands for Applicant Tracking System, which is essentially a tool used by companies to filter out applicants. Right. So companies get hundreds, possibly even thousands of applicants per every job opening. So this could be a useful tool for them to filter out who's actually qualified for each opening. And so this is important for you to know, because knowing how ATS works can help you build your resume such that it can be easily read by an ATS and not lead to a loss of information. Right. So having a resume, for example, that has strange formatting, exotic fonts, intricate graphics, can lead to a loss of information and thus lead to your resume never being read by an actual person. So knowing that, let's talk about one of our first questions, right? Keywords. So a very common function used by ATSs is its ability to sort resumes and search for keywords, right? And keywords are important words in job descriptions, right? Here on the right, I provided you an excerpt from an actual job opening on Glassdoor.com. It is from Edison, and it's an internship aimed at civil, electrical, and industrial engineering. I've provided arrows, the red, yellow, and green, pointing to some words that should be included in your resume if you plan to apply for this job, right? Such as SharePoint, SQL, or AutoCAD and MATLAB. You may not know what these tools are, but that's okay. You can always research them on your own. But these are things that in every job description you should look out for and try to incorporate it into your resume, right? So moving on from that, another question you might have is whether or not you should use a resume template. So it's rather debatable in this area, right? There's not a clear-cut yes or no answer to this, but I can provide you with some pros and cons. Some pros is that if you choose the right template, it can make yours, stand out, right? If it's visually appealing. Another pro is that templates allow you to finish making your resume in a much faster time, which means you can spend more time on the content rather than making it look pretty. And some cons is that some templates may be too generic, and some templates may be even too complicated for an ATS to read, right? And additionally, some templates are not ATS friendly, and it can limit your expression and how you're able to make your first impression, right? So moving on from that, how long should your resume be? So ideally, a resume should be 1 page on one side, and this applies especially to people who are new professionals, new graduates, or students who have less than 10 years of experience. And the reason why you would do this is because employers often don't spend more than like 10 seconds looking at a resume, right? So to save their time and to make sure they read the most important stuff, make your resume as short as possible and as concise as possible to read. And as far as margins and bullet points, margins are the little white space around the resume or the edges. This should be kept around 0.5 to 1 inch, whatever distributes the content evenly without making too much white space. And as far as bullets, which you would use in your job descriptions, 3 to 5 should be more than enough to describe what you've done. And keep in mind, it's best to write a few well-written bullets rather than a long list of them. And so, how much of your personal contact information should you put on your resume? Obviously, there's the basics that generally everyone expects, such as email, phone number, address, your name. In fact, these may be actively searched by an ATS, so it's good to have them there. And it's best practice to put them in the very top of your resume and write them such that they take up as little space as possible, right? And so for your email, putting email is crucial along with your phone number because it's one of the ways where employers can schedule interviews and even possibly host them. For your email, there is an etiquette that is involved in making them. You want to make sure that it contains your full name, not too many random numbers, and that it doesn't sound silly, right? So you can't use something like, ladiesman217@gmail.com. That kind of stuff won't fly. And for things that you should not include or things you should avoid is, your date or place of birth, marital status, your gender, religion, anything that's irrelevant to the job description. You don't want them to, you don't want anything to hinder your possibility of being selected, right? And so to show an example of how you can incorporate an address to your resume, I provided one from Mount SAC, right? So here on the image on the left side, you will see all the possible formats you could use for your resume. Right? There's the city-state and zip code, the complete address, the area, and if you're actually relocating or in the process of moving, you could say, relocating to Walnut, California, for example, right? And the reason why you would put an address is, one, it's typically traditional to put on there. People expect it to be on there. An ATS may be actively looking for it. So if you don't have it, that can hinder your chances. And lastly, it can also tell your employer what they need to know about you in terms of where you are. This could lead to a conversation about commuting. It can lead to a conversation about, working remotely, right? And so moving on from this, here I provide an example from one of my resumes of what my contact information section looks like, right? So obviously, in the very top, I have my name stands out. Below that, where the orange arrow points to, is my city, my location. I've decided to only give my city and state because I personally think it's unnecessary to give more than that. And the next to that, I have my cell phone number, which is obviously blocked. Then below that, where the blue arrow is, I provided my email. And as I've mentioned, it has the same format as I suggested, your first and last name. And then I've blocked out the last part of it. Then next to that is my GitHub link pointed by the black arrow. And this will take someone to where I have all my projects that I've used programming with. Then the yellow arrow points to my LinkedIn page. And LinkedIn is essentially a professional networking site. We'll possibly host a workshop on that on a future date. But yeah, this is an example of how a contact section may look like. And so moving on from that is what fonts should you use or can you use, right? So on the slide on the left, I provided you a list of common fonts that you can use for your resume, right? And a little fun fact, there are actually like two types of fonts you could use. There's the serifs and the sans serifs. Serifs you can think of as like intricate fonts, and sans serif you can think of as non-intricate. And the way you can tell the difference is that the serif fonts have this like little tail to them, like as you can see on the T here, whereas sans serifs are usually pretty flat with no tails and no intricate designs on them. And typically a sans serif is much more easy to read, and I'd say better to use for like body text or descriptions. I guess also a rule of thumb is that it's best not to mix and match multiple fonts together in one resume. At most, you can pick 2 fonts, one for your typeface or your headings, and one for your job descriptions or body text. So, and then when you choose these pairs, make sure they're not distracting. Make sure they complement each other very well. And as far as the sizing of your fonts, it's best to use 10 to 12 point fonts when you're writing your body text. And as far as your headings, you can use whatever you want, as long as it's not too large, and as long as it gets the attention. And a little question for you guys is, I want you to type in the chat right now, what is your favorite font? What is your spirit font? What font you emotionally connect with and you think about every day? The font you rely on. So make sure you put that in the chat. We'll view them later near the end. But I can't wait to hear what you guys think or what you guys say is your favorite font. Moving on from that, here's an example from Resume of how fonts were used. In the top where the black arrow is, it says education, right? And so this will be the heading. And for this one, it is actually Times New Roman, right? It's, a serif font. Then below that, where the orange arrow is, this is the description of it. This is using Calibri, so a sans serif font. It's much easier to read as well. Then the blue arrow or the cyan arrow indicates the date, and so this can give you an indication that this is probably a chronological resume, right? So moving on from that, other questions you may have is, well, what colors can you use or should you use? And also, is it okay to put your picture on your resume? Right. So colors can oftentimes be up to personal taste in some cases, and it's for some job openings. Usually this is used for jobs that require creativity or artistic skills. And when you do use colors, they have a specific function. And one of their main functions is that just to direct your attention, right? Since employers spend less than 10 seconds at a resume, colors can be used to direct their attention to certain parts of the resume. And when you use colors, make sure they're not exotic, bright, vibrant colors. Make sure they're muted, dark colors that are close to black, as to not confuse an ATS, right? And of course, you can always just use black and white for most cases, especially if you like design experience or if you're applying online, right? If you're applying online, the company will most likely use an ATS, and it's best to use black and white so it can be easily read. And next is the picture. Again, depending on the job you're applying for, a picture can either be beneficial or unnecessary, right? So if you're applying for a job that needs your photo, such as an actor, then obviously it'd be a good idea to put it. However, if you're not doing that, then it's not really a good idea. And the reasons why is because a picture won't say anything about your skills, right? Whether you're a good fit or not. And a picture will take a lot of precious space on your resume, and you want to save that space for your job descriptions. Additionally, a picture can be confusing for an ATS to scan and read. So in all cases and purposes, it's best to remove it. And also here in the US, it's common convention to just not include a picture. So it's therefore your safe bet just to not do it. And with that, I'll pass it on to our lead, Aaron, to talk about the rest of formatting tips. Oh, Aaron, I think you're muted.
Sorry about that. But thanks, Giovanni. So I'll be talking more about the nitty-gritty of how to actually write your resume and write the examples or write the content that you would put under each category that you would put in your resume. So let's start with the cover letter. The cover letter is something that when you first are searching out a resume is recommended by recruiters, but it's usually not required, and your work should speak for itself. If the application does ask for it, though, the cover letter is a great way to get recruiters to know the more human side of you before the interview. Like, say, for example, in the first example, this person's interest shines through when they say, "There's nothing more exciting than exploring the unknown and soaking in all knowledge one can." They're really showing their passion for learning about anything that would be involved in the internship or job that they're applying for, and has a passion for exploring new things. Another way that the cover letter can be used is to explain your major and your coursework. Say, for example, in this one, this person built a strong foundation for code through learning a variety of languages, technologies, and frameworks over the years. So this person goes on to explain the tools used to expand their tech focus, but this could also be any other focus if you're applying for other non-technical jobs, such as media jobs, so platforms used for showcasing media, or any other platforms related to the job you're applying to. The cover letter could also tailor your resume to companies or your application to companies on why you're applying to that company. In this example, this person is applying to Microsoft. You're hiring a team at Microsoft. And with the cover letter, you could also use your activities to relate to these companies and why exactly you're in the activities to see if there's any company values that the company is looking for in your application. So for objectives, it's usually not recommended by recruiters to put an objective in your resume because recruiters would rather see projects and any other work-related experiences that can fill up your resume. Your resume is usually one page, as mentioned before, and so you really have limited space to put your projects and your experiences. But if you don't have much work experiences or activities, definitely use it. Like say for example, in this one, this person explains how they're looking for an internship program that can be used to obtain their knowledge, but also apply the skills that they have towards the internship. Recruiters would uh, again rather see experiences related to your major, but it is a good way to showcase your goals as an applicant. Another way that is effective for your resume in writing it is to use active verbs. Instead of saying I delivered this or I programmed this, you would really want to make it short and sweet, and you would have to start with these active verbs like a bullet point list. Like say for example, programmed in C++ to achieve some goal, or delivered content to some other goal, or coordinated between others to achieve another goal within the organization you worked for. Next is, so you really want to again make sure to tailor your resume to different companies. Like say for example, this person was applying to GitHub. They say contributed to open source code, and GitHub really likes seeing open source code on people's applications. And so it's a plus if you put it in your resume and it reflects what the company is looking for. And in the third bullet point in this example as well, this person used Android Studio, Google Cloud Platform, and various APIs. It could be any API like YouTube that they would explain in their interview process. And this person is clearly applying to some Google related job or internship. And as Giovanni mentioned, the keywords here are the tools that this person used to enhance their knowledge. And make sure to always put keywords while writing your resume. If you don't have any skills that may relate to the company as well, though, make sure to see what skills you would have to apply to the company's specific job. And always make sure to read the company's missions or goals before you apply to the job so you know how to tailor your resume accordingly. So next for specificity. So what we mean by this is that it's super important that you never want the recruiter to be confused by anything that you are saying in your resume. You really want to be very specific in your examples or bullet points that you put on your resume. So in the first example, this person said they formulated and organized technical plans for the building of the car with advisors. That's really not specific, right? Because like what kind of technical plans did you formulate, or what's a solar car, or what car is this even? And it leaves you with a lot of questions, and recruiters would ask the same type of questions. They really would want to know what specific technical plans you formulated. Like, was it a plan formulated using AutoCAD? Was it something like a business plan, a business pitch? And so they would really want to know what exactly you did in that organization, so that they know you were really involved. A second example, this person said they managed the electrical team to build the solar car components, experimenting with a system integrated from a 0fx 3.3 motorcycle. So one good thing about this example is that they specified the tool that they used to when they were working under this organization, and what tools that they know how to use when they go into the company. And another thing though is that they didn't specify what components they use. Could have been anything from simple wiring to really complicated stuff. But one thing, of course, as always, you need to specify what components, what plans, or what tools that you use in that organization so the companies know how to relate your skills to what they're looking for. Another important thing is numbers. Numbers are always really important to showcase your skills. They quantify your achievements and your skills in your resume. It's always impressive and it puts more of a numerical bias towards you in your application and what you did. It's kind of like how when we see an ad that uses some statistical data, like 100% of the customers are satisfied kind of thing. And it's impressive because we're able to quantify what effect that the person had or their program had on their customers or anything else. And so you always want to try to quantify your achievements in your bullet points. A reference list, it's rarely talked about when you search online when you are applying to any job, but it's also usually not required. But if the job description does say that you need a reference list, definitely look out because they may only say it in the descriptions of the job. But what a reference list is, it's basically a reference, literally a reference list that the hiring team can contact. So contact information of references that you would think vouch positively towards your application. Some software options that might come up when you're researching how to write your resume is tools that use this markup language called LaTeX. LaTeX is really similar to HTML, and it can be also easily read by ATS systems. However, if you don't know what LaTeX is at all, or if you're not familiar with it at all, that's completely fine. It's not necessary to know. So stick with the classics. Google Docs, Word, any word processor that could save your work into a doc or a PDF is great for ATS reading purposes as well as readability for any recruiters that are looking at your resume. And lastly, you really want to know your resume. What we mean by that is that you want to make sure you know your resume inside and out. Interviewers during an interview may ask you to clarify points on your resume or talk about it to confirm that you're able to use these tools and you're able to explain what happens with these tools when you're using it so that they don't have to train you as much during the job or on the job. Lastly, you really want to avoid flowery language. When you are deciding between paragraphs or lists, you almost always want to go with lists. And you want to make every word count, so to keep it simple. In this example, we see this person organize and design flyers for blah, blah, blah. If you're applying for like a designer job or a UI UX job, the recruiters would want to see what kind of designs or any design techniques, tools that you use to design these flyers, but not necessarily like how much, what was it for specifically, because they wouldn't know what this is for even if you explain it in the resume. And this leads me to leaving out stuff in your resume. Extra details like the example above that the person did would really want to be left out when writing your resume. You're going to run out of space when you're writing your resume if you have a lot of experience, since you always want to try to keep it at like one page. But another way you could avoid this is by saying if there's two words that could emphasize your skills or your experience, like say for example, very experienced. This could equate to skilled, adept, or proficient. And so instead of saying very this or very that, other words that can be condensed should always be used to make a stronger word that could get your point across to recruiters. But as always, include relevant skills, relevant tools, and any relevant experience that you may think relate to the job application. And so I'd like to ask you all a question. After all of this, what are some of the experiences you have that you're planning to put on your resume? And we'll wait for a bit for the questions, but we'll see them later and comment on them. And with that, I'll pass it off to Jasmine.
All right, thank you, Aaron. So I'll address a few common questions that might show up while you're writing your resume. The first one is, should I include high school, college, or club experience? Well, if you're fresh out of high school, yes, you can include your high school experience. Yes, you can include high school experiences, but only limited to 1 to 2 outstanding achievements. And after you've graduated from high school, you want to focus more on college achievements, such as a leadership position in a club or a research project. And then after you've graduated from college, you want to start integrating more internships or job experience. And try to leave out trivial achievements as they may hurt you more, for for example, a regular club member position. So the next question I'll address is, should I include unrelated jobs or activities? You should leave them out if they're completely irrelevant. However, include them if you lack experience, as this will fill in the gaps, and if you can connect it with a relevant skill. So for example, say you're applying to a receptionist position and you have past experience as a cashier, you can link it to say that you've gained customer service skills at your cashier job. So for the next topic is, what if I have an extended job gap? Well, don't freak out too much. Let's take a look into it. Will it hinder me? Well, it does raise a red flag with recruiters. However, it is possible to overcome, and I will tell you how to do so. So, in your explanation, you should keep it honest, and you should match anything that you did during that gap, whether it be activities or volunteer work, that relate to the job. You should reassure them that it will not happen again, and for good reasons that you could use to explain this are: one, the business you were employed at failed and closed; two, for family reasons; three, you were finding your path, so you changed careers; and four, illness. And you want to make sure that you're keeping these explanations short because, once again, you are trying to keep your resume at 1 page. And next, a few formatting tips for your job gap. You can list your jobs by year rather than by month in order to disguise some of the gaps. And you could choose to format your resume based on skill rather than experience, so using a functional format rather than a chronological one. And when including your job gap, you should list it like all your other jobs in the experience section. Next is, do I include my GPA? Well, you can include your GPA when you are still in school or you graduated at most 2 years ago, and if you have a high GPA around 3.5 to 4.0, and if you had no Latin honors title. So how should you format it? Next we'll go on how to include it. You should put it in your education section, and you should put it in parentheses when you have it next to a Latin honors title. You should also follow the common format of GPA, the abbreviation, colon, and then the number. So on the next slide, I have a few examples. Boston University Bachelor's of Science in Psychology, GPA 4.0. And then Boston University Bachelor's of Science in Psychology, the honors title. And because there's an honors title, you have the parentheses GPA colon 4.0. And the last example, Walnut High School, GPA colon 3.8. Next is, what do I showcase if I have no job experience? Well, you can include extracurriculars like clubs or sports, any volunteer work, internships, skills that are relevant to the job you're applying for, and relevant coursework that you've taken to prepare yourself for this job. So now I want to ask you guys, what is an interesting club or any previous clubs that you guys have joined, and share it with us. Leave it in the chat and we'll respond back in the chat. Now I'll pass it off to Nathan.
Thank you, Jasmine. So I'm going to be covering the importance of projects and extracurriculars on your resume. And this section is important because it shows that the skills and that you're putting on your resume are actual skills that you have, things that you've applied before, and not just something that you put on there to make your resume look good. And it's important to include concrete skills and not just buzzwords. So it's easy to say things like leadership skills or people skills. It's a lot more useful to make things specific, as Aaron touched on earlier. Articulating specific skills is great, and showcasing them is even better. And if you can showcase to whatever recruiter or employer you're presenting your resume to that you have specific examples of your skills, then it's going to make you really competitive. And a big part of that is finding pragmatic ways to showcase what you've learned. And so I'm sure a lot of you have learned a lot of different things. You've put in the time in school to learn various topics, but you may not have applied them to real world examples yet. And so finding ways to do that can be really useful, and it's an important part of applying to whatever it is you're trying to apply for. Internships or positions. A big part of that is quantifying knowledge. And so just having the knowledge or understanding the fundamentals of different skills is useful. Applying them kind of takes an extra step. It takes a deeper understanding of whatever it is you're talking about to apply it to a real world example. And so you can do this through projects, either personal or professional ones. You can do this through experience, professional in the past, or you can gain experience through extracurriculars like clubs. You can show this through awards, certificate, honors, or titles, anything that really shows that you were exceptional at something. And next we'll cover what kind you could show to potential employers. So when it comes to projects specifically, you can the cart can kind of come before the horse here. You can kind of pick something that you're interested in or something that you care about, and you can learn it in a deeper way by making something related to it or by working on something that involves it. And so this is important when it comes to showcasing what you know. And what makes a good project is something that shows end-to-end oversight, meaning that you saw the project through from beginning to end and you paid attention to a lot of the details in between. And this shows that you can see something through and reach an end goal. That's very important. In it also is important that the project lets you learn something or showcase something that you learned already. And something that adds to this bonus is if it shows your personality or creativity, then that can give the employer some insight into who you are as a person and some of the creative aspects about yourself. Projects that show problem solving and leadership skills specifically are also very good. Those are a bit more generic skills that you can kind of tie down to something that are also really useful in the workplace. Some examples of these are going to be coding competitions or hackathons, especially if you took a leading role. Coding projects specifically with an end product or goal. And these can be seen in like websites, applications like mobile applications or web applications, pathfinding algorithms, applications for different operating systems, small games, AI, bots, anything really that involves whatever technical or professional skills that you want to showcase. Open source projects or community service works are also very good, like Aaron mentioned earlier. These can show that you're contributing to something that you don't directly uh, uh, benefit from, and they can show some strong moral character and a willingness to contribute. Past projects from previous jobs or internships are also very good. You can point to specific things that you've done before professionally. Like let's say you worked on robotics with a club or in a previous internship. That can be very good. That can show that you've applied what you know in a professional setting, which can be very useful. And next we can go over some specific examples of people who have done this. And so a great way to showcase your work is through a personal website or portfolio. You can, especially for technical projects, this is a good way to showcase them. You can do this for free with GitHub Pages. If you're a student, then you have free access to a lot of those resources. And even if you're not, you can still use it for free. You can also use the skills that you learned from the previous web design workshops on this and make like a basic website or portfolio. Something kind of related to this is if you should put your resume on LinkedIn. Putting it on LinkedIn isn't really a good idea since you should be tailoring your resume to whoever you're applying to, and you don't really want it floating around on the internet because anyone can see it, and it kind of puts you at a disadvantage when it comes to competing with other applicants. But putting it on your personal website can be a good idea, and right now we can go over that. So we're going to go over 3 specific examples of different people who have done this well. The first one's going to be Michael Reeves. Some of you probably know him. He's a YouTuber, but not all of you have seen his personal website, and it's actually really good. I really like it. I hear at the top, he has his contact information, like his email. He has a basic resume that you can look at. It's not too in-depth. It just gives you some insight into who he is. And he has his YouTube channel. And ordinarily, I wouldn't recommend this, but here it really fits because that's where Michael puts a lot of his work. He puts a lot of his robotics and coding projects on there, and it's kind of a passion project for him. And it gives you more insight into who he is. And so here it kind of works. Scrolling down, we can see that he has a header that gives you some insight into who he is. Professionally, he has specific examples of past projects that you can look at in overview, and he has a lot more details when you go to them. And here at the bottom, again, he has his social media, more ways to reach him. And overall, I think this is a good example of how you should showcase your work and give some employers insight into who you are. The next is going to be Andrew Ng. He's very popular with AI. And when we go over, you're going to see it's a little different than the previous one because Andrew is more focused on academia, but it gets the same, it has the same effect. And so if you look at his webpage, you could see he has his publications, his research, his courses, a lot of the work that he's done, and it puts him as an authority figure when it comes to the different topics that he teaches about. You can see more about him on his About page. He has an FAQ, his contact information. If you go here, he can easily link to this to whoever he needs to through a short link, andrewng.org. And on it, you could see a lot about him and get a lot of insight into who he really is. Moving on, we can see Lex Friedman. someone else who's really popular with AI, and this one is a little different as well. It's not as professional, so it's not as geared towards. I think Lex already works with MIT, so his goal here isn't really to like land internships or jobs or anything. But you could see it has the same effect. And so Lex has a lot of his work on here, again through research and publications, and it again puts him as an authority figure because you can easily see specifically and pragmatically what he has done, what he's knowledgeable about, and what he's good at. Moving up to the top, again, you could see his social media and you can learn more about him if you really want to. And he has some of his passion projects, like his podcast. You could see that he's really a person. He has personal interests like playing guitar, jujitsu, and he has his mental and physical challenges, which I personally really like. It shows that he's very hardworking, disciplined person, and it kind of fits here. Whereas putting something like that on like a resume or something may not really fit. Um, and so, yeah, those are three of my favorite examples of how you can do this well. I hope that looking at them gave you some ideas for how you can maybe make a personal website or an online portfolio and showcase some of the work that you've done. And I hope that some of the examples gave you ideas of projects or extracurriculars that you guys can work on your own. Moving on, we're going to go over some of the resumes that you guys have submitted, and I'm going to pass it back to Aaron.
Yeah, thanks, Nathan. So let me just share my screen.
In the meantime, do you guys have any questions that we can answer for what we've addressed so far?
Also, and if you're not watching live, if you have any questions while watching it on your own time, please put any questions you have, and we'll go back and answer them when we have time.
Yeah, feel free to email us with any questions. Okay. Am I sharing?
Uh, yes, I can see. I think zooming in would be
Alright,
helpful though.
Yep.
for sure. Okay. So for this person, let's see here. So they have their education, experience, and skills and interests. It's good. Um, I would say, let's see. For under experiences, I know Perspective is a JP Morgan specific tool, so you might want to capitalize that and definitely capitalize online since, of course, you know, you want to keep professional and grammatically correct, since it is a topic starter. Um, Definitely when you are giving this resume to other uh, applications, you want to make this past tense, but that this is a present job from what I'm seeing. So for now it's okay, but definitely do update that when possible. I see for relevant coursework you have AP Computer Science A. Um, it is a little bit outdated since you do have programming in C++ and advanced C++, and this sounds like a high school experience. So might want to see whether or not you want to include that. Let's see. For
Is the
multiple hackathon.
I was
Oh,
gonna ask,
sorry.
is the contact information section like completely blocked off, or was it not included?
Oh, it was included. I noticed that when you did include this though, you put your full address in the contact information. You really only want to put the city and the state in your header, so make sure to change that. Since it also can be a privacy issue if you have your full um, address on there. For activities, I see depending on what job that you're applying to, I'm not sure if badminton team would relate, as well as like fitness, traveling, piano. If you do have other experiences that you've done in school or done around campus, definitely do include that, since I see the only experience you have is a work experience. Um, Even with other job experiences that may not relate to a technical job, definitely do include that because that also shows your people skills. And I see Coursera courses, that's pretty cool.
Hmm.
Yeah,
Would
for multiple hackathon competitions, might want to specify like maybe a couple projects that you did, since I know you do have some space in your resume, like the margin is around down here. Um, yeah, might want to include any projects that you built to showcase the skills and what kind of skills that you developed during a hackathon.
Yeah, I would agree there as well. I think putting more like it seems like you've listed all your activities, right? I think one thing you could do to add more to your resume would be in the skills and activity section would be to add a particular project that you really feel proud of and really go in depth to what you've learned in that and how you've grown from doing that project. It seems like you just hear like a list of things. Um,
Hmm. Oh,
Yeah.
one thing I did notice is that, sorry, go ahead.
Oh, okay. No, I just wanted to add as well. Like I know when just initially looking at it, how in the education section, it's a bit easier to read because like you've bolded your topics. Like you have GPA bolded, and you have it right next to that. You have honors bolded, and then you have your description right next to that. Same for relevant coursework. And then in their skills, activities, and interests, it's you're not really bolding like your language, technical skills, certifications. So it's a bit harder to read. It just looks like all the text is merging into one. So you can't really, if somebody's specifically looking for your technical skills like that you have or any activities that you did, it's really easy if it's bolded that they can skim through and like find certain sections like that. So bolding stuff in your skills and activities and interests, such as bolding the language, technical skills, certification, and activities portion of it can be really good for making a bit more readable.
Hmm.
yeah, I like to add in as well in terms of formatting. It looks like you've used this bullet points when it comes to education experience section. However, within the skills and activity section, you've used the dash instead. So I think it's better to make sure you have a consistent and the same outline throughout the entire resume. And also because for the dash one, it's more to the side, and I think it should be lined up with the ones on top of it, right? And also another thing that I noticed was that the dates for the education and the experience are not aligned. For the education, you have it all the way to the right, whereas for the experience, I think it's placed towards all the way to the left, and so you have to like skim through and around to find them. So having them all on the same side, lined up, can be easy to look at and much easier to read.
Yeah, I definitely agree. Put the date details and places usually are next to the experience names, and then dates are usually to the far right. But you could also format it like this. One thing I did want to note is that you put proficient in like your skill levels for under technical skills. Maybe avoid that uh, just to just in case, like, your skills may be subjective to you versus subjective to the recruiter. Um,
I was gonna mention, I really like the Coursera courses. That's a really nice way to show that you're taking initiative and learning more than just what you're learning at college. All I would add is tie down your technical skills through projects. So mention that you know C++ and that you've, or Python or whatever it is, and that you have shown it through whatever it is that you've worked on through those languages. Find something concrete to tie them down to. That way, it's not just a subjective rating that you're giving them.
yeah, I
Yeah, and I
definitely
like to follow
agree.
up as well, and like participate in any hackathons that you find, or do a project that can really help, as Nathan said, ground down your what you say.
Yeah, and as you build these projects, I would recommend that you replace that section with the Coursera courses so you can actually show what you've done with the knowledge that you gained from these online courses. All right, so let's move on.
Yeah. I will just add one last thing. I'll just don't be afraid to at least just add a touch of color, because like just having it pure black and white, it's a safe option, but just adding like maybe like a dark blue instead of a black for say your topic or for your headings, it can make your resume just kind of pop out a bit more, make it more pleasing to look at, as well as it can also just be used as a good sectioning off. Instead of just having to bold everything, having a different color can also work with that.
Yep. All right, let's move on. So for this resume, I'm at first glance I'm seeing there is a lot of text, and it is sort of in the more paragraph format. So you usually want to put this in bullet points. Um, I see you kind of did for like summary of what you've done in the organization, and I see that you are using active groups. That's pretty good. Um, might want to like separate things such as enrolling new members and then resolving disputes. Might want to separate that into like 2 bullet points. Um, and then I see the word spacing between this and these two are different. So also want to fix that. Mount Suck is in Walnut instead of Pomona. Um, I'm not sure if you want to say that you're transferring to Irvine because it's not like the concrete yet, but you definitely want to put what major you are. If you're planning on getting an associates, definitely do put that. And I see that you have the dates. That's pretty good. For core values, I would say you should show these values instead of writing them out, because these values can be shown through your work in these different organizations that you've been through or been in, and they could showcase like who you are as a person as well. So instead of writing them out, show, don't tell. Mm, and also with skills, you'd also want to show, don't tell with your skills.
Are you able to scroll down to like the summary and language section? I cannot see that.
I wouldn't really recommend putting a summary. Instead, I would use that space to expand more on what you've done in these experiences. It's because a summary can take up a lot of space in your resume, and it is sort of like an objective. So for objective type things, you want to always condense that, since recruiters don't want to read so much of your resume and take that much time reading through it.
I also noticed there's a lot of white space that's taken up in between each section of your resume. You can possibly add a bit more space to add in more projects or whatever you want to add into it by shrinking down almost the how much space is put in between each section, and maybe partitioning everything off, or like cutting everything off with like a little line that you can maybe put in there just to kind of section it off, instead of having that one big line of white space in between each of the sections.
I was going to follow up after what Aaron said to, you can use the space that the summary takes up and really expand on each section, right? And also for instead of writing it like in a paragraph form, try writing it like in a bullet form, where which allows an employer to quickly read everything. As far as the dates, the dates seem to be the same throughout, so that's good. Although I do notice that you decide this one uses in the skill section, it has the dash to separate them, whereas in the other ones you do not have that. So, and one thing you can do is eliminate the dashes for the skill section, or put something like that for every single one. Um, and yeah, and possibly try to think of ways to quantify your descriptions and put in numbers in there.
Yeah. I guess the last thing I would add is you definitely want to reorganize. Like, usually summary would go on top, and experiences, and then education can either go towards the top or bottom. And then yeah, use this skill in general to expand more on like what tools or what you've used throughout your experiences. Like you could put languages under qualified skills, like towards the top. Um, and yeah, does
One more
anyone
thing I would
else have?
say, yeah, I think for this one, since the major for this one is computer science, I'd say try to redo your resume such that you put more computer science projects on there, right? And whether you don't have some, you can try looking into doing hackathons. And from that experience, you can write that down here and replace a few things, such as replacing the summary with a project that you've done that showcases your computer science skills.
Yep. All right, moving on to this one. Okay, so let me just do a quick read. One thing I do notice is that you might want to switch extracurriculars and projects because extracurriculars look like um, they'll take place in your work experience for now, and so you definitely want to switch the two.
Lauren,
Uh,
can you zoom in just a little bit more? Yes, that's good.
one thing I do notice in your descriptions is that you do summarize some things that you've done, but you should definitely start out with any active verbs, like say for this one, uh, used, or find a better verb for it. Use MATLAB and concepts of differential equations to blah blah blah. And same goes with the rest of them.
Yeah, I'd say definitely for this one you can definitely add a bit more space for adding more projects by reducing how much text is going into the descriptions. Even though it is good to provide that context, having too much almost it makes it look like a paragraph underneath it, and most of the time employers may or may not read everything that is that you're describing under those bullet points. So instead, you can just have an overall project instead of having all that text. So,
Yeah, and going off of that, you usually want to keep your bullet points to one line. You can expand it up to two, but try to keep it to one line. Like for example, for this one, you might want to condense that into one line and then maybe add a second bullet point to expand. One thing that also I'm not sure was mentioned in the presentation, but for bullet points for the different activities that you've done, um, you want to keep it to an equal amount of bullet points for most activities. You can vary it a little bit, but if you have like a varying number of bullet points for each activity, it might show like bias towards one activity over another. Say for example, this one has 3 bullet points and has a pretty long description, but say for this one, it only has like 1 bullet point, and maybe you can expand more or attach it under a extracurricular. Other than that, I like the format in general. I did notice that the margins are very small though, like especially the bottom. There's not a lot of margin space. Might want to condense your descriptions and then have some margin.
I think this is a very good example of how the projects should be formatted. There's specific examples of what tools were used or what languages were used when doing each project. So I really like that. And then I really like how they expanded on the details of each project.
Mhm.
In terms of the top of the resume, I noticed that you have the heading education, then you have Mount Sac and transfer in blue, then beneath that you have relevant courses underlined. So I feel like there's a lot of things trying to fight for your attention. Because as I was reading it, it was hard to know which one I should focus on. I looked at education, then I looked at the underline, then at blue, and then back again at the underline. So possibly remove the underlines from relevant coursework, programming language, and skills environment. So that not everything is trying to fight for your attention.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. You could put this in bold and then remove the bold from the transfer part since you are still part of the part of Mount Sac. For relevant coursework, remove the underline. Could either bold it or italicize it. And I noticed that the spacing over here and over here is not equal. Yeah, that's an easy fix. All right. Any other comments?
Not for me.
Yeah, no, we're good.
Oh, I guess also one thing, Vex I think is capitalized, but that's also easy fix. So let's move on to our last example. Okay, just skim through it. Again with the bullet point bias, I see that you have 5 bullet points for this one, but you only have 3 for the rest. That might hold a little bit of weight for recruiters, like saying you might have focused on this activity more than the rest of your activities. I would say learned isn't a very strong active verb. You might want to say utilized or something to replace that because you want your verbs to really show what you did in your experiences. Same with created and finished. Submitted shouldn't be capitalized.
I feel like there's redundancy in collaborated with team of 5 programmers to learn how to build a Discord bot. It's like the second half is redundant.
Yeah. You could expand more on like what specifically you did to contribute to the Discord bot, instead of just saying collaborate to learn how to build, because recruiters really want to know what specifically did you do. And for this one, this project will be used. You should focus on what you've done when you're doing descriptions, instead of and to highlight what the project will be used for. So like in your descriptions of what you did, include this, but reword it. Develop what using Udemy for this one.
I would say again with this one just as well as like for formatting and making it look presentable and easier to read. I know initially I'm not sure about you guys, but for me, taking a first look at it, it was hard to initially see how everything was sectioned off. Because they're like the only real thing that was used is like underlining and like bigger fonts, but possibly looking into bolding some stuff, maybe adding like some other colors, or some other dark colors. Like using dark blue is always a good go-to. And yeah, and also maybe I do see that you have some words that are italicized in here, but just using those so that you can better partition off your resume, just so it's easy to see as soon as at a quick glance which parts of your resume exactly hold what information.
Yeah, agreed. This is my personal opinion, but I would recommend just sticking to one font. It because it was a little like confusing to um separate the fonts in routine, but again, it might be a styling preference.
I also want to add in the education section. I noticed that you could possibly include your I also noticed this with the previous resumes, that maybe you could also include your GPA if your GPA was higher since you still are in school. So you could add that after your major or after Mount San Antonio College. You could have a comma GPA and then colon and then your number.
Yeah.
Right. You also might want to shorten Mount San Antonio College or remove it because being part of the honors program, you're already under NOTSAT, and so this is a little redundant. Other than that, for software, you already have these are CAD softwares depending on who you're applying to, but adding CAD as a skill is a little redundant since you already know how to use these softwares. Other than that, does anyone else have any other comments?
I noticed in this resume, which wasn't done, at least for what I know in the previous resume, I'm not sure about the other resumes, but in the skills section, adding those like people skills that you have, or just certain skills that can be good for a company that aren't just technical skills, like how you specified long-term planning as a skill can be really good because again, you don't just want to show like only that like what technical skills, but also what other skills you have that you can apply. So that was a really good thing to add that. It's always good to have this.
I would actually recommend against putting people skills in the skills section because people skills can be shown through your experiences, and of course you always want to show, not tell.
Yeah, that's actually true. That's true.
But yeah, if no one else has any comments, I think that's all the resumes we got.
Yep.
It's still worth saying that these were all good resumes.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think these are very good. There are just some things from the workshop that we mentioned in the workshop that could be tweaked a bit.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Definitely, these are all.
Overall. Yeah, the formatting overall was pretty good, but yeah. With that. All right. Cool.
I shall resume my stream. Awesome.
All right. So we are at the end of the workshop, and if you do have any questions in the chat, feel free to post them now, and we will review your comments. I see some people's favorite fonts are Comic Sans and Calibri. Building the Netflix page is a good place to put your resume, or put the experience.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I definitely wanted to add as well, like when Nathan was talking a bit about having a portfolio, building your own web page, definitely like using the skills that you guys gained from the web dev workshops is super good, where you can just build your own website of like having your resume or projects that you built on it, just showcasing all of your skills and experience on there. It could be really good, and just in itself, building that website can be a good refresher for using all the knowledge that you gained from those workshops. So if you are following along, definitely something that you guys can build. If you haven't, definitely recommend you guys checking out the web dev workshop series, so that you can kind of build your own portfolio as a website.
Yeah, I definitely agree. It could be a fun thing to do on the side.
Mhm.
Also, guys, if you have any questions and while you're watching after the fact or after the live stream, feel free to post them in the YouTube video comment section, and we'll go back and answer your questions.
All right.
Right? I think we should move on.
Yep.
Let's do it.
So if you have always, as always, if you have any questions, feel free to email us with them. We'll be happy to answer. Um, and since it is almost 12:30, we'll be closing off. So to close off, make sure to watch out for our next and final web development workshop. We'll be starting the YouTube landing page, but we'll leave off with tips on how you can complete it. So we're not necessarily going to be completing it, but we'll definitely guide you along the way. If you are planning to complete it on your own. So it will cover the first half of how you can build it, and then the second half will be up to you. And it's definitely a great project that you can put on your portfolio. And for our next event after, get excited because we have a Halloween party. This will be on a Halloween
Woo!
afternoon. Yep. Woo! This will be on Halloween afternoon. Since unfortunately this year we might not be able to go out, but we can still meet everyone virtually on Halloween. So definitely join us on our Discord channel for a special Halloween event and play some games such as Among Us, Scroll.io, or even just meet the officers and have a virtual coffee chat to meet other members in DSC and get to know one another. Since we did start this club virtually, it'd be a great way to connect with other people in the club and make some new friends.
Woo! Yeah, join us
Heck yeah.
for some fun on Halloween.
hmm Ask any questions you like about us, get to know us a little better maybe, or just introduce yourself on that Saturday, and we're super excited to meet you all on Halloween.
Heck yeah.
We might even have some surprises planned for you on that day, so watch out.
Ominous.
And as always, we'd love your feedback for our workshops, and we thrive off of your guys' feedback to grow the community. So if you are able to, definitely please fill out this Google form. It will take less than 5 minutes for any improvements that we can have during our workshops or anything you found maybe was something that you wanted to see in future workshops too.
Mhm.
And keep in touch. We have our socials all listed here. Take a screenshot. If you haven't already, join the Discord server. Post all of our announcements there, and you get announcements ahead of the DSC platform. And yeah, feel free to follow us on any of our handles. And thank you so much, guys, for coming to our workshop. We really loved having you. And if you are watching this after the workshop has ended, feel free to connect with us still. We check our email all the time, and we're live on all our social media handles.
Heck yeah. Thank you for coming so much.
Yes.
Thank you,
Thank
guys.
you everyone for coming.
Woo!
So hope you learned something new. Hope you all can build a good resume. Yeah. Don't forget to like and subscribe as well, guys, for more
Smash that
content.
notification bell.
Absolutely demolish that like button.
Heck yeah. Awesome.
All right.
Nice.
We'll see you all later.
See you guys.
Bye, guys.
everyone.
Bye bye.
everyone.